You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
And a very warm Wednesday good evening to all of you. Those of you who are listening to this on replay, those of you who are going to be tuning in live, who won't even hear me say this, but hello, thank you for joining us. Yes, it's Penny G. Morgan and Haunted Histories. So how is everyone? Been up to anything exciting? September now. Those nights are going to start drawing in. We're going to have to start wearing jumpers again in the UK. Oh, it's a hard life, isn't it? But at least the kids have gone back to school, so I think wine consumption near where I live is probably going to go down for a short while, but, you know, it'll be Christmas soon. So, who listened to last week's show on the Washoe Club? If you didn't, fret ye not. You can still go onto YouTube and pick it up on there. Remember our YouTube Parasearch channel. As the lovely Kerry Greenaway always says, click, like, share and subscribe. Although she doesn't say it quite like that, but you know, I'm not gonna try and imitate the great one. No. Anyway, yes, so you can listen to that one. Now, if any of you is sort of going, like, what the hell's the Washoe Club? Sounds a bit weird. Hi James, haven't seen you for a while. Thank you for joining us. I was getting a bit worried. I thought you'd been kidnapped. There you go. See, I care. I'm a caring presenter. Actually, we all are, probably, but, you know, I got to say it. But, yes, so the Washoe Club. If you don't know what it is, if you're a fan of Ghost Adventures, or even if you're not, but you watch Ghost Adventures, there's one of the ones that I think they've visited 3, possibly 4 times. It's an amazing place, and any investigator I know who's based in that part of the US raves about the place. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to last week's show, go and have a listen to it on YouTube or on Spreaker, whichever you prefer, but do make sure... just a bit of basic zombifying. Okay, well, I hope you didn't eat too many people then if you were being a zombie. Because, you know, pretty sure it is actually still illegal. But, you know, it's good to see you, James. It's good to see you. So, the Washoe Club, go and check out the show we did with author Eric Benson. And if you can, go and have a look at his books that he's written as well. He's a good friend of... I think he's one of Richard Estep's best friends, closest friends. So, and in fact, Richard, bless him, when he was sharing out the post for last week's show, he said it contained 2 of his favourite people in the paranormal. Sorry, James is making me laugh in the chat room. This is the problem when I do live bits. People distract me and make me laugh, but it's all good. It's all good. Laughing is important. So, what else have I got to say? If you like a show that we've done, please do share it out and get people you know to have a listen. The word of mouth is going to be the best way for people to sort of find out what we're doing and why what we do at Parasearch with all of our different shows might be a little bit different. Talking of shows, you might notice on the event list there's no Spectral Zone with our Scottish Rocket, Kaz Rooney, tomorrow night. She's taking a bit of a break, but she'll be back next week. Back to her normal, excellent interviewing self. So don't worry, she's not been gone. And you can always catch her shows on YouTube and everything else if you're missing her. So don't forget about that. What else have I got to tell you? I'll make sure that I'm not going to get told off. Oh, the competition. We've got a competition on doing some amazing crystal-based products on our Facebook page. So if you haven't entered that, and damn and blast, presenters aren't allowed to enter it. I think I'm going to have to get them to rewrite the rules on this one. It's not fair. It's not fair. I'm sulking. I am sulking. But yes, so go off, and you've still got a few days left before the draw takes place. But have a look at that, and the whole sort of like, comment, and all that thing. But do share the page out if you like what you hear. Share the shows out. You know, we appreciate that. We appreciate you getting the word out there of what we do. So, I've waffled on a bit. I'm sorry. That's nearly 6 minutes of waffling. Oh well. Tonight show. Well, I'm heading to the Mediterranean, and I'm heading to the small island of Malta. Now, I've visited Malta on a couple of occasions, and as you will hear when I'm chatting to my wonderful guest, who is actually Maltese, and English isn't his first language, but he did an amazing job of the interview, Mr. Charlo Sammut. You'll hear me introduce him formally in a minute. But I was lucky enough to visit Malta on a couple of occasions, but I've also got quite a lot of links there. My dad worked there for quite a long time. My uncle was based there for a long time in the RAF. So it's always been an island I'd heard of. But what I didn't know until I went there and visited and did some research 9-10 years ago now, was exactly what Malta went through in World War II. Now, I'm going to be talking a bit more about it when I start my interview with Charlo, but there's an awful lot of people who have got Maltese family or have got Maltese links, and one of those people is hi Mark, good to see you, dude. Is one of our Parasearch friends, Mr. William Taboni from the Australian Paranormal Society. Yes, the Maltese have got as far as down under. It's his father's side, I believe, who are from Malta, and he sort of, when he saw that I was doing this show, he said, would you like me to tell you a few of the stories that my relatives used to tell me, first-hand stories from when they lived on the when they were on the island, when they lived there, and during World War II, and you know, being a historian, and I know this is the history bit and not the paranormal bit, so I do apologise, we will get to that bit for you, but I wanted to read these because these kind of highlight how amazing these islanders actually were. Now, he says that his uncle had transferred from the Royal Engineers to the Medical Corps and was actually working in the military hospital at Imtafur, I think that's how you pronounce it. And one day, him and his friends were actually sitting on the roof of the hospital when a German fighter flew over and tried to machine gun them on the roof of a hospital. Apparently they ran for their lives. Not surprisingly. The same uncle apparently spoke of an incident when a stock of, he thinks they were something to do with smoke screens or whatever, were stored in some tunnels in or near the harbour at Valletta when they ignited. They're not sure whether this was caused by bombings, but he spoke of the men that he helped to treat that were in the tunnel when they went off, and he said it was one of the most horrific things he'd ever seen because their lungs were basically just full of black gunk. And those that they could help, it was pretty harsh, the treatment that they had to do. His dad's mum, this is Bill's dad's mum, his nana, had a restaurant, and apparently, I remember him telling me this story, I think it's brilliant, and she hated guns. And at one point the military expected the island to be invaded, so all the military were wandering around armed to the hilt, carrying sidearms, rifles, etc., etc. But his nana would make them put their weapons in the back room before she would feed them. As he put it, bless her, but her cooking was so good, they did just as she asked. And he said it makes him laugh because she was such a gentle soul. And but as a side note, his nanu, his grandfather, actually ran the Naffy kitchens, which you will hear when we talk to Charlo. There's a definite theme there. He also says that his dad was a child and then a teenager during the war, and he remembers seeing things like bodies of soldiers washing up on shore after they'd been in the water for days in an incredibly bad way. He said he would see the faces of the German pilots, the Luftwaffe, in their fighter planes, because apparently they were incredibly daring and very low to the ground. He also told me that the officers that came to his nana's restaurant, you know, those ones who would have to put their guns in the back room, would sometimes take his dad to the movies to treat him. And he recalled once that he was returning home with an officer after a movie, and he was running ahead of the officer when the air raid started. A bomb dropped quite close, and apparently debris from the blast hit and killed the officer who had just taken him to the movies. He also talked about the Luftwaffe bomber and fighter planes that would come in so low to the Grand Harbour at Valletta that the tail of the plane would actually touch the water. And he also saw possibly one of the damaged destroyers that was being limped into harbour as part of the convoy of Santa Maria, which you will hear me talk about with Charlo. Now, you may think it's strange that all these people remember similar incidents, but the population of Malta during World War II was in the region of 270,000 people. So it's not unlikely that these people might have known each other. But shall we listen to that interview with Charlo? And like I say, it's a good interview. There's a few technical glitches, though, which you'll hear me apologise for, so I apologise for them now. But I hope you enjoy. Right, and on tonight's Haunted Histories, I'm delighted to be joined by an amazing guest, all the way from Malta, and that's Charlo Sammut. Is that right, Charlo? Sammut? Yes? From Malta,
Yes.
Malta
Hello.
Paranormal. Hi, Charlo, how are you?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Good.
Thank you,
good.
and hope you are all too.
Well, thank you ever so much for joining us. I know that English isn't your first language, and as I said, your English is much, much better than my Maltese. And my Italian. I can't speak either very much. So thank you for talking to me in English. But one of the things we were talking about before we started recording the interview was the difference in the approach to the paranormal in Malta compared to the UK.
Okay.
And you were saying it seems to be a lot more accepted in the UK than it is
Yes.
in Malta. Why did you set up your group, Malta Paranormal? Because you said you set it up 8 years ago now.
8 years. 8 years from the day that we founded the group.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back about 10.5 years ago.
Okay.
I had a personal experience, and from that I get into paranormal more to try to believe what happened to me. So
Yes.
at that time I started alone,
Mm-hmm.
but then a friend of mine, I talked to my friend and said, why don't we do the investigations together? And from that it was born Malta Paranormal.
Okay. So, what has been your favourite investigation to date?
To date, from every investigation that we done.
Yes.
Okay, there are a lot, but the best two places obviously was Saint Angelo
Okay.
in Birgu, and in Birgu, another place in Birgu in the Maritime Museum.
Okay.
Both of the investigations were fantastic. And the
Okay.
third one, if you want to know, it was in the UK last
Okay.
year
Whereabouts?
in Coal House Fort. in
It's near
Essex.
me. That's near me. Yes. That's
Yes,
very near me.
It's very amazing, that place.
Oh yes. No, yes. No, Coalhouse Fort is probably 20 miles away from where I am, because I'm in Essex, in the UK. So I know Coalhouse Fort very well. We've got some amazing forts here. If you like forts, there's some. Next time you come over, there are some amazing forts that you can investigate. So what did you enjoy about Coalhouse Fort, Charlo?
We had a very not a personal experience. We've been in an international event. Actually, Malta Paranormal is part of the European Paranormal Activity Society. We are about 20 countries now.
Okay.
And the UK is part of EPAS. And every year we go to one of the members' country.
Oh, wow.
And last year it was the meeting was in the UK. The year before it was in Malta.
Okay.
And we were set up the investigation, and how can I tell you what happened? During the investigation, I was behind an old door from part of the court, and the door just knocked me out of the way. I had in front of me, so that's why I told you, if you want to know the third place that I've been and was perfect, because that fort is really active, and, and we had a very good night in it. So and we brought home so many evidence from it.
Yes. I think forts do tend to. I've always found forts to be. I've investigated a few, and there's always a lot of energy there, and there's always a lot of activity. You mentioned you won't use the word haunted when you describe a place. Why is that?
I don't use it because you have to investigate a place not one or two times. You have to go several times in it, and you pick it the same evidence or nearly the same evidence every time. Because you went to a place for one time or two times, and you get really few pieces of evidence, you can't say that the place is haunted.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. For what it's worth, I do agree.
Malta, I can tell you that there are places in Malta that are really haunted. We've been to Fort Campbell in Salmoon, in Melliha, Malta. We've been there about 50 times.
Okay.
If you can ask my teammates, they laugh because every now and then I tell them we go to Salmoon again. They tell me again, but we got a really good evidence from there. So that's why I can say that.
Yeah.
Not only one or two times.
Yes. But do you find there are some places that you want to go back to over and over and over again? Fort
Campbell, it's one of them, because every time that we go, we have good activity, and we bring evidence, of evidence. And we go a lot of times, because even the two museums that we went, I want obviously I want to go back and investigate them, because as I'm telling you, one night is enough to investigate a place. You have to go several times and to see the difference from investigation and another.
Yeah, it is quite. It does. It's not. it's a surprise sometimes, or a good surprise when you get this. Go back to a place the second time and you get exactly the same piece of evidence that you got the first time. It kind of reinforces.
Yes, and there sometimes you go there and the place is quiet. So you say that the last time was really active. The other two times that you go back, it's quiet. Then you go again and it's good today. It's active because from my opinion, it's not only the place. It's not always the same. It's there are times that the place is active and there are times not because there are times that it's like a memory. So the place it's not always full of people. You know what I'm saying? It's not always. When you go, it's not always the same. Even when it was during World War II, it wasn't always full of people. So that's why you have to go different dates and different time at different times. So
yeah. I think as well, sometimes a place, it can depend on who's been through that day before you investigate that night.
Yes.
It can depend on what mood you're in when you go in there to investigate, because the different energy is very dependent also on you, the investigator, not just the place. So, but I find there's some places that I am drawn to, that I feel very like I'm supposed to be there. Does that make sense? So places that you want to learn more about because it means something.
Yes, it actually it depends on how you're feeling too when you are going to an investigation. If you are tired or you're going through some problems or that you are weak, mainly they pick on you. You get out a lot of different energy, so they normally choose the weakest person to communicate, and that's that's what makes the investigation different from one another. So even your energy
I agree.
will depend on your energy too.
Yes, I agree. I've seen people affected quite badly by something that has tried, say, picking on me, and it's not worked, so they go to the next person. Yes, I've seen that, and I've been the one who's been picked on when I've not been feeling very well, or I like you say tired, or I've had a bad week. It is very it's all very interesting how things affect what happens to you. So you mentioned World War II, and that was the sort of era that I wanted to focus on tonight, because Malta, even though it's only something like 140 square miles big as an island, it's had an awful lot of history. There's an awful lot of things have happened in Malta over the 1,000 years. So it's got everything. It's got something for everyone in its history. But I wanted to focus on the World War II aspect, because when I visited Malta back in when was it, 2008 and then 2009, it was the World War II history that my husband and I were interested in. And it amazed me to read and to learn about what the Maltese people went through from June of 1940 to August of 1942. And without sort of giving people a full-on history lesson of why Malta was attacked, basically it was needed because it was part of it was near to the supply lines to North Africa, the Axis. So the enemy, as far as we're concerned, the enemy supply lines. So it was needed to maintain it for the Allied forces, so that they could interrupt those supply lines to Rommel's forces in North Africa, which they managed to do. But what the Axis forces then realised is they needed to basically bomb Malta into submission, and that's when they chose to start. First of all, it was the Italian Air Force that started the bombing runs, but they got fought back quite easily by the very small number of British aircraft, which I believe there was only 3 aircraft on Malta at that point. It was 3 biplanes called Faith, Hope and Charity were the 3 planes before the Spitfires and stuff arrived. When the Germans then started, the Luftwaffe then started bombing using their dive bombers, their Stuka dive bombers, the raids really picked up. They really picked up in tempo. And I believe that in the first half of 1942, there was something like 250 raids plus each month.
Malta, the harbour area and the airport area has been nearly demolished. All the towns and all the buildings.
Yes, yeah. It's if you just Google photos of Malta at war, you can see the destruction that was levied on the island. But the Maltese government and the British government started to realise that they needed shelters. Now I believe the statistics I found said in 1939 there was 270,000 people living in Malta at that point.
Yes, it's nearly half of the people that lives now, because now it's nearly 500,000.
Right. So, and what they actually decided to do was to start building these public shelters out of the rock.
Yes.
And in June of 1941, they had about 470 shelters, which could house up to 138,000 people, roughly. And I think they were building another 300 at the time. Now, have you investigated any of these shelters, Charlo?
Not exactly investigated. I visited a lot of them.
Okay.
But investigated, it was in Bormla, not Sanglia, Cospicua.
Right.
In Cospicua. It's not a very big one, but it's an interesting one because of its kind. It's not like the others.
Right.
It's one floor, not with different terrains and staircases.
Yes,
and
yeah.
And it's in the.
Okay, so we had a little technical glitch there. Anyone who's ever been to Malta probably knows that Malta, their electricity stops a lot. That's why Charlo is laughing in the background, because that's exactly what happened.
Yes,
the electricity went off.
Yes, and came back instantly. So
yes.
So they let us continue with the show.
We were talking about the bunker you were talking about. That's just all on one level.
Yes, on one level, and it's in the fort walls in Cospicua. It's in the the fourth wall. So it's in bedrock, in limestone.
And did you say you have investigated?
Yes, that is investigated for a few hours, and it was really interesting because we got footsteps, and even we got an EVP with baby crying.
Wow. And how did it... I know how I felt in the shelters that I went into, although I didn't get to investigate them. I just visited as a tourist. But how did it feel down there? Did it feel like there was a sense of fear or of anything in particular?
Not fear, but how can I say it? It's when you hoping that something ends and the war ends. It's not. They at that time they've been terrified because of the air raids. So they all prayed in them to finish the air raids and eventually to finish the war too.
I mean, you say the air raids. As I said, there was over 250 a month in the first half of 1942, and I found that Malta spent 2,357 hours under raid.
Under raid.
Yeah, and was there something in the region? I found disputes as to how many tons of bombs were dropped, but it was a lot. So I can understand that kind of feeling in one of the shelters. I think the thing that I found the strangest when I visited the one at Imgar, the one that's behind the is it Ilbarry? Is that how it's pronounced? The restaurant?
Yes.
Yeah. It was the smell still of what they would have burnt to light it. There was still that kind of smell in there. And the fact that people had, their little spaces that they'd created for their families, they'd put tiles down on the floor.
Yes, and they even make a small church in a chapel in the shelter.
Yes.
And playing area where children can play at that time.
Yeah.
They make it feel like home, how much they can.
Yes, yeah. It was quite amazing, and as I was telling you before we started recording, when I went to the Imgar one, I was 6 months pregnant with my first son, and the guide pointed out where I would have given birth if I had been down there.
Some of them have even rooms like that.
Yes, it did. It had a maternity room at this one at Imgar, and it's not something I would have wanted to do to give birth underground. No. I suppose you were safer than in the hospital above ground in a way, but so this one you're talking about, you got an EVP of a baby, a child crying.
Child crying. Maybe I can't be sure that it was coming from eventually from inside the shelter, because now part of the fourth wall has been demolished in World War II, and they built apartments near it. So maybe it was from those apartments in the nearby.
Maybe. Yeah.
But it sounded really clear. So
yeah. And you didn't hear it yourself. It was
at that time we didn't hear it with our own ears.
Right.
Even the smell. it was we had similar to it in that shelter in Birgu. In Bormla, not Birgu, because Bormla, Birgu, and these are the three cities very close to each other, and I mixed the place.
But you were saying to me as well that where you live at the moment in Malta, how many air raid shelters did they have?
There are about 4 or 5, but one of them is about 3 or 4 years ago. It have been cleaned, and it's owned by a social club, a band club from Bikrikara, and it's about 500 meters long.
Right, and is this underground as well, built into the...
Yes, it's underground, and it's similar to the one that I visited in Bormla, and it have many branches but in the same level.
Yeah.
It's about 40 or 50 feet underground, but on one level.
Right. So...
And the same, even at that time, they had a police room in it for police, a room for the vicar. We call it proposto.
Yes.
In Bikrikara, but it's like a vicar.
Right.
And even had a small chapel in it.
Wow.
It's nearly the same as the one in Birgu, but a little bit bigger in the area of this.
And this is now a social club?
Yes, it's part of the social club. It's beneath the social club.
Right.
The entrance was found in the basement of. They were cleaning the basement of the social club and find the entrance of it.
Wow.
And then they cleaned it all, and they even make activities in it.
So, do you think there's many more of these shelters that are going to be discovered?
There are many private ones that were built by private people, private families. We don't know about them. They found a lot when they demolish an old house, and they're excavating, and then they find the shelter.
Wow.
There were many cases.
Well, some of the stories about what happened. I mean, as I say, I mentioned just that sheer number of how many hours Malta as an island was under raid from the Axis Air Forces, and it did bring Malta to its knees. I mean, the islanders were very close to starvation, weren't they? There was no fuel. They were. I know that they were struggling to even get the aircraft up in the air to try and fight off the Luftwaffe. But there are also amazing stories, like the church in Mostar. The bomb fell through the roof.
Yes, the bomb was produced in Czech Republic, one of the camps in Czech Republic, and it was with the fuse was defect, and we call it a miracle in Malta that there were about 500 people praying in the church at that moment when the bomb dropped.
And it rolled down. I remember when I visited, it said it rolled down the aisle past the people praying.
Yes.
And just stopped. But that church at Mostar is very beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful church inside. It's absolutely beautiful. But they must have been very thankful that
Yeah, of course.
it didn't explode. So what other places have you investigated in Malta that are to do with the World War II sort of era?
Mainly, yes, the World War era, mainly were British bases in Malta, because there were a lot of forts. We've been to Fort Maddalena, we've been to Fort Campbell, we've been to Fort Chambray. We've mainly all the forts that were built by the British. We entered, at least not for investigation, but we visited them. So for us, it was even good. So because we entered in part of the history.
And you mentioned the Maritime Museum that
Yes.
you investigated. Where's that? Is that in Valletta?
In Birgu, in Birgu. It's beneath the Fort Sant'Angelo.
Okay.
In the same place.
So the maritime side of things associated with World War II were quite amazing, because the Allies were trying to get their ships into I think it was the port at Valletta, wasn't it? They were trying to get their ships in with supplies, with more aircraft, and they were just getting constantly bombarded by the Axis forces.
There's a piece from U-boat, from the German U-boat, and there are a piece from another German ship or something like that. It's in the museum, same. Because the museum it goes back from the Knights of St. John.
Oh, right, okay.
Till the British Navy.
Okay, so when the Royal Navy and the Merchant Navy managed to get there, the supplies to Malta, I think it was called the Convoy of Santa Maria.
Yes, Santa Maria Convoy. Yes.
Yes. And they managed to get, I think it's only something like a third of the ships that set off actually got through, but they limped into port at Valletta.
Yes.
So the whole, being an island as well, the whole same as the UK in that respect, maritime is very, very important to you. What sort of experiences did you have at the museum when you investigated there?
We heard footsteps, and we even smell, because part of the museum once during the World War, it was part of a bakery that they bake. We call them galette. Did you know what is it when you were in Malta?
It rings a bell. It rings a bell.
Flat pastry, and you can have dip it in dip, and it goes like that. And
Yes.
we smelled the scent of the bakery doing those, and that's what have been closed. The bakery have been closed nearly 60, 70 years now.
Wow. So did you pick up anything to do with the conflict? You know, did you experience any? Did you get any EVPs of voices? Did anyone hear any voices? EVPs.
Actually, EVPs, no. But we use that radio, the ghost box, and had some words from it that make sense to what we were asking, like if they used to work there or not, and if they are sailors or we get that kind of response. I'm a little bit skeptic about the ghost box. So.
I know a lot of people are. Do you when you're in these places, do you ask your questions in Maltese or in English?
We try to talk both, or even in Italian, or when we have guests from Spain, we even told them to speak in Spanish too, because Malta was in different stages, but we had different countries that came to rule the island. So we can get different stages from history.
Yes.
In our activities, but mainly we talk in Maltese or in English.
Okay. So do you find using a different language can sometimes trigger some activity?
Yes, definitely. Because
what's been your best experience of that?
In Fort Campbell, in Salmon, Maliha, we were having a session, and one of us asked, "Are you a British soldier?" And the entity played with the K2 meters first, and then one of my teammates told him, "Do you want to smoke a cigarette?" And he lighted a cigarette and put it on the wall, and the cigarette went just like somebody is
using it. Yeah.
It's smoking it.
Wow.
And even when we got the VP from the session, when we were home, we heard, "Oh, thank you. I really needed that."
Wow. And this was, you say, Fort Campbell in Malta?
Yes, and we know with whom we were talking to. With the name of the soldier, and we even made research about the people that work there, and we found that name.
So was this a World War II soldier?
Yes.
Okay. So what was Fort Campbell used for?
Fort Campbell, it was an anti-aircraft fort. Okay. They had a radar. They had three big guns in it, and they because from Fort Campbell, when it's clear, you can see Sicily.
Okay. So
that's why it was an anti-aircraft, because and it's camouflaged fort. You can see it from the air. You don't know that is a fort. Because they will start shooting from the cannons to not let them come to Malta, the enemy aircraft.
Wow.
And we find that the name that was in the VP, it was Sergeant William, and we find it in the history too.
So you verified he existed.
For us, it was wow, like it was very good.
That's kind of something we all want to experience, isn't it? When you find that piece of information that confirms what you've...
It confirms what was in the EVP. So that's, for us, it's very good. And even we got two shadows in
okay.
We have them on our YouTube channel too. We put them on our YouTube channel.
And what's the address for your YouTube channel?
Malta Paranormal.
Malta Paranormal. Okay. Well, make sure we put the link up for that for you on our pages as well, so that people can go and have a look at those. Because, as I say, I think a lot of people don't realise quite what Malta went through, and those, and it wasn't, the people who the Maltese, the islanders, but also the servicemen who were based there, who were trying so hard to protect the island with very limited resources. And they think that something in the region of, I think it's around 2,500 people died, including service people and Maltese during that period. So, well, that's 10% of, well, no, sorry, 1%, at least 1% of your population died during that, and that's a massive amount. It's a massive amount for a small island. So, and I'm interested that you do speak different languages to try, and that's something I've always wondered is do spirits understand a foreign language? So if I went somewhere that their native language was, I don't know, French, would they understand me asking them in English, or should I be speaking French?
I have a theory that in the afterlife you don't have a language. You have one universal language.
Ah, okay.
But in our case, sometimes it works really better when you speak in different languages. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but when I was in the UK, I spoke to them in Maltese. So
okay. So this Sergeant William that you found
makes theory that after in the afterlife there is only one universal language.
One language, yeah, definitely. Well, that helps me with some of my questions on it. But this Sergeant William that you found, did he die on the island? Or
no, we didn't find that he died there. He worked there. He was in Malta at that time.
Yes.
And he worked he was stationed in Fort Campbell.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
We didn't see any history that he died there or something like that. But maybe he liked Malta that much that when he passed, he came back.
He was drawn back. Yeah, sounds that way. I don't know why he wouldn't love Malta, because the Maltese people are lovely. That was my experience when I visited there. And when I came back the following year with my little boy, because he's got blonde hair, green eyes, people were stopping us in the street to say how cute he was. And it's a very, very warm island, very, very warm people, in my experience anyway. Definitely somewhere I say to people, go and visit if you get the chance. So what places have you got coming up to investigate?
In the coming days, we have the Post Office Museum.
Okay.
Valletta, it's a government place.
Mm-hmm.
And another fort, but it's open. It's open for public anytime, so we're going there for the third time. Now.
Okay.
It's Fort Rinella, part of Fort Rinella.
Right.
But the part not from the British area. It's from the Knights of St. John era.
Yes.
It's a little bit older than Fort, because Fort Rinella was used by the British.
Mm-hmm.
It was built on another fort from the Knights area. So
yes.
we're going to the old part.
Right. Brilliant.
And it's last time that we've been there, it was good too. So maybe we have the same kind of evidence and activity.
Are you going to be posting all of this on your Facebook page?
Yes.
And, yeah. So anyone who we'll put the link up for the Facebook page on Parasearch as well, so people can go and have a look at your evidence, and we'll post the YouTube thing. And if anyone does go to Malta and they want to sort of visit some of these places, you must go, because they're fascinating, absolutely fascinating places, and it does make you realise what the islanders lived through during that time. You must know people who lived through it, Charlo.
Yes.
Yeah. And what do they say of it? What did they have any memories of that time?
My old people, yes. My mother talked a lot about the World War II. And my father now has been passed away, but he was part of the RAF, I guess. Yes. He was a chef, and he was part of the army. So he talked a lot, very lot about that time.
No, amazing island. So if anyone does want to read up more on the history, please go and do it, because I think it's something that when I visited and I started learning about it, amazed me. It amazed me what these people had gone through. So, well, thank you ever so much for your time, Charlo. I've really appreciated
it. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Oh no, I've enjoyed it. And if I ever get out to Malta again, I'll drop you a line.
Yes.
Because I want to go and see this Fort Campbell. So if anyone does want to contact Malta Paranormal, please feel free to do so. So we'll put all their links and everything up on the page for you. Again, my thanks go to Charlo for his time. So all that leaves me to say is until next week, don't forget, if you're missing us, we've got all our shows are on our YouTube channel as well, and you can catch them on the Spreaker app that you're listening to at the moment. Loads of shows for you to listen to on loads of different subjects, everything from the history side to what I do, to the spirit side that Kerry does, to things that Kaz produces, to the Supernatural show, loads that you can listen to. But until next week, have a good night, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.